Hi, everyone. I'm Michael Roberts, Vice President of Sales and Marketing at SPK and Associates. Now, today we're going to tackle a topic that frustrates a lot of companies and a lot of IT groups, which is single sign-on, or you may hear SSO. Specifically, we're talking about how to simplify the authentication and access management in Google Workspace and Microsoft 365 without all the headaches that you might expect. And we'll maybe dabble in a couple other IDPs and how they may be a little bit different. But high level, we're going to really focus on Google Workspace and Microsoft 365. To help us break down this topic, I'm joined by our head of cloud and infrastructure, Mike Solinap. Mike, before we dive in, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hello, everyone. Mike Solinap. I lead up our cloud and infrastructure practice, and aside from servers and networks and things like that, we also do a lot of SSO related work. So glad to be talking about this topic today.
Awesome. So, Mike, a lot of companies are avoiding fully enabling SSO in Google Workspace or Microsoft 365 because they assume it's really complex, which sometimes as somebody who's messed with it, I can attest it is a little daunting sometimes. But
Right.
what are some of the biggest misconceptions or maybe technical hurdles that you see during a setup?
Yeah, the biggest misconception is that hey, it's not worth the time and the effort, right? Because typically what they're doing is they've got access to their application and they say, oh, I know how to create a local user. I'll just create a local user, assign that user a password, and then I'm off and running, right? So why do I need to go through all the trouble of setting up single sign-on? Just not worth my time, right? And I think that requires some deeper thought. And so in terms of it not being worth their time, the biggest thing I've seen are compliance issues, right? And compliance risks. It's a big topic nowadays. So you know, for some of our customers that are required to adhere to compliance regulations, those regulations typically have very strict offboarding processes, meaning that when an employee leaves a company, it can be really difficult to keep track of who has access to what application, right? You need to be able to quickly switch off access, make sure that all your bases are covered so that it doesn't become a risk later down the line. Right, and likewise, another compliance risk related to the use of local accounts is they can be ripe for sharing, which is again um, something that compliance programs typically want to outline is finding accounts that are shared between users who has access to one account across maybe even several groups or several users. That's kind of a big no-no, right? So aside from that, another thing that is really worth implementing single sign-on for is it can really help enforce two-factor policies. So you kind of get that as you onboard users, you can enforce these policies, and it makes it a lot easier as opposed to dealing with each of these individual applications, which may be handling their authentication in their own little way. Another big misconception that I've seen is that the time savings just don't add up, and I think that's not what we've seen, at least across all of our customers. So think about you've got just a small handful of users, and they're spending their time logging into an application maybe once or twice per day. That amounts to a whole lot of time savings over the course of a month, over the course of a year, and think about even larger corporations that have hundreds, if not thousands of users, so that time savings can easily multiply. Another topic around complexity. So this is a little bit more kind of in the weeds, but when a lot of administrators say that SSO setup is very complex, and the reason for that is because a lot of applications, they oftentimes have different names for kind of the same technical term. So in Okta, you'll see the parameters described this way with these different names, and then in an application, you've got the application provider providing parameters and named something completely different. So it's really hard and challenging to get those to align. And if those don't align perfectly, then the authentication just doesn't work. So that can be pretty tough. And then finally, another really tough technical component of setting up single sign-on is attribute mapping. So you have a set of attributes that the identity provider has, such as first name, last name, phone number, etc. And then your application may have a subset of those fields as well, right? And so the two systems uh, need to kind of coordinate those fields, and sometimes they pass that information back and forth to know who the user is that's logging in. And that's probably one of the most challenging components of setting up SSO. So usually what that results in is administrators are combing through logs, or they're just using trial and error to get through the issue.
Yeah, and that obviously can take some time, and we've seen that with our own clients where we're implementing SSO for them. So,
Mhm.
Mike, can you maybe walk us through some common SSO challenges that we've helped solve for clients, and then maybe how you and your team have helped simplify or automate that process over time?
Yeah, so SBK partners with primarily Atlassian and PTC. So we've engaged in quite a number of SSO projects throughout the years with these products, I should say, in conjunction with Azure, AWS, and Okta, as Michael mentioned. So we're able to be quite efficient and also work through the best channels and resources when we need that support and things don't quite go as planned. So a common setup challenge that we've run into is with getting Jira and or Confluence integrated with SSO. And Guard is a prerequisite product that you kind of need on the Atlassian side. You have to have it licensed, and then on top of that, there's some organizational steps that you've got to do within Atlassian that you need to perform, such as claiming domains and then setting up authentication policies. So there are a lot of steps to get that kind of lined up before you can start logging in. And then also another kind of extension of SSO that we typically help out with is user provisioning, right? So getting users logged in, that's kind of a big chunk of what the value is with SSO, but you also gain this additional capability of automation, which is really attractive for our customers, meaning that if I provision a new user access to Jira, for example, maybe the next step I might do is provide him some permissions via groups or access to certain projects via groups. So that all can be done automatically via skim provisioning. And we've helped out a lot of customers in terms of automation, workflows, and processes to help save time and effort.
So interesting that there's a obviously scalable, repeatable process that we've followed, and luckily I think we connect to all the different players regardless of application that people are using. So yeah,
Mhm.
that definitely streamlines the time that it takes to implement SSO. Now for companies that want obviously better security and easier access management, which is kind of the benefits of SSO to begin with, but they may lack the internal resources to be able to set that up. How do we and our team help them in getting the most out of whatever IDP they're using, whether it's Google or Microsoft, and be able to get those SSO capabilities?
Sure. So for those customers that don't necessarily have the internal resources to take on an SSO project, SPK helps out from soup to nuts and everywhere in between. And I can talk a little bit about that approach. So we always start off with thorough planning and assessments. So we look at things like, okay, what applications are you looking to connect? Do they have any compatibility issues? Like I mentioned, do they have any licensing requirements? And I'm talking about either with a specific application or even on the IDP side. There can be some licensing implications as well, some therefore cost implications as well. Next, we work with roles and permissions with customers. As I mentioned, like with Jira Confluence, for example, maybe you want to look at certain groups of users only having certain access to a certain application. So we kind of map that all out for them. And then we also look at other prerequisites such as networking access, connectivity, and then there are also some other prerequisites like SSL certificates. And then, once we complete the assessment, moving on to the implementation, again, what we're doing is we're taking our expertise with engineering applications that we've worked with, coupled with our cloud expertise on the AWS, Azure side of things. Um, and then, some of the other IDPs we've worked with aside from Google Workspace might be Okta, as well as more recently Jump Cloud. We've done a lot of work with them as well. So aside from the cloud providers, we've also worked with on-prem um, identity providers like ADFS, although that's becoming a little bit less common nowadays as everybody's shifting to the cloud. But we still have that capability available in case customers want to keep things on-prem. And then finally, ongoing managed services, right? That's really our bread and butter. So once we're done with the implementation, we don't just say goodbye, because as with any complex set of applications, these things require ongoing monitoring, alerting, and even recurring maintenance. So we don't want to do something as simple as, having an expired SSL certificate cause a huge outage, which some of you listening to the call may relate to because it's a very common situation, right? So um, our managed services helps kind of catch those before they become a problem. And then additionally, our customers want to get the most out of what they've invested into their IDP, and that means looking at new opportunities to include what other applications can we onboard into the system. So having managed services relationship with SPK helps customers know that it's just kind of all taken care of for them.
I love it. Thanks, Mike. I appreciate your answers to some of those questions that we've been asking or getting asked for quite some time. So thanks for your time there. And I think what Mike has basically said here today is that you don't have to be intimidated or worried about how long it's going to take to implement single sign-on. If you have the right expertise, we can actually provide a lot of value there. And we do help organizations streamline the authentication and reduce that security risk that Mike mentioned with being able to onboard and offboard people very easily and improve those user experiences across tools like Google Workspace and Microsoft and even other IDP platforms. So if you're struggling with SSO implementation or you want to simplify your setup, reach out to our team, our contact page, or our phone number. Would be happy to help. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe to the SPK and Associates YouTube channel, and hopefully we'll see you next time. Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, everyone.